All right, welcome back to Sunnyside Speed Shop. And in this episode, we're going to reveal the drivetrain for the El Camino. If you haven't seen my past videos, go check them out. I'm restoring a 65 El Camino in a backyard. But I'm looking around for a drivetrain for this thing. I got no motor, no trans, no nothing, and I need a motor. I got one. Check it out, the big reveal. There it is. If you can't tell right away, this is an LS motor. But I'm calling it my Undercover LS. Alright, this is a 5.7 liter LS6 out of a 2004 Cadillac CTS-V. I replaced the cam with a BTR, Brian Toolin Racing, truck Norris cam. Very mild cam, but it has a great sound to it. And then I went ahead and went with a knockoff Holley fuel injection intake. Take this air cleaner off. And I'm running this adapter plate from Delmo Speed down in Arizona that allows me to hook up the original drive-by-wire throttle body off the truck, or Camaro or CTS-V, whatever. I'll be using a truck wiring harness, so I'm using the truck throttle body. So I've never run an LS like this before, so we're going to see how well it does. I'm running valve cover adapters from Holley Performance that allows me to run old school small block Chevy valve covers, and the spark plug wires are going to pop out of these little notches here. So the coils are going to be hidden underneath the valve covers, which is pretty cool. Went with this finned valley cover with the oil fill in the middle, so it gives it that old school look. These are knockoff Hooker exhaust manifolds for LS. Actually, these are just copies of the factory LS3 exhaust manifolds. They're identical. But yeah, there it is. I've done a bunch of LS swaps, and I know it's kind of controversial with the older generation. They don't like LSs. And arguably LS motors are ugly. They're just not cool looking. So I'm trying to make this one look a little bit cooler. I like LS swaps because of the reliability. It's turnkey, starts every time. You don't have to warm it up. You're not pumping the gas. Fire right up, throw it in gear, and go. And you get decent gas mileage if you keep it like a stock LS. Stock LS3 makes 425 horsepower and it still gets 25 miles a gallon on the freeway. Like, you can't beat that with a small block Chevy. But most of the time we're not really too concerned about gas mileage in our old cars anyways. It's more about the miles per gallon. But I got a LS in my 70 Chevelle. I've had a bunch of LS swapped cars, and that's just not cool looking. I don't even pop my hoods at car shows. It's just, a big block 454 in this thing with the factory Cal induction air cleaner is just way cooler looking. There's nothing special about that at all. This, in my Roadster, looks way cooler. Just way cooler. You got the cool valve covers, got the carbs. It just looks way better. But we're gonna try this out. The Undercover LS. So what I'm gonna do in this episode is pull this thing off the stand, pull the pilot bushing out of the back, because this thing was originally mated up to a 6-speed manual trans. Got to pull the pilot bushing out of the back, install the flex plate. And then I'll go ahead and bolt it up to the transmission, which I have, which is a 4L60E. And then we can talk about some of the wiring modifications I got to make. So let's get the cherry picker out and get this thing on the ground. All right, that was super sketchy. My whole garage is on a slope, so I'm fighting it from rolling downhill and crashing into my Chevelle or one of my other cars the whole time, so that's fun. So now it's finally on the ground. I can get going on this pilot bearing here. All right, here we are at the back of the engine. This thing has a pilot bearing in it because it had a 6-speed trans behind it. And there's a special tool puller for getting these things out. I don't have that, but instead I have this tool that a friend of mine let me borrow. And if you're watching, thanks, Paul. He says you could just hook this thing in here, like just like that, and then it hammers right out. So let's see. Look at that. He was right. Thanks. Awesome. So if you're putting an automatic transmission behind any engine, you got to make sure that this area is clear because the torque converter index is into that, and that's what holds it steady and straight. Not just the bell housing bolts, or I'm sorry, not just the torque converter bolts. It actually indexes into this. So if you're doing an LS swap or any motor swap, verify that there's no pilot bushing in there before you put your automatic transmission in. All right, got my flex plate. This is a 4L60 flex plate. It only has 3 mounting holes, 1, 2, 3. 4L80s ones will typically have 5. And on this, it'll tell me which side is which. Right here it says, I don't know if you can see that on camera, but it says engine side stamped into that. So, engine side. There's a dowel here for lining it up. There's an extra hole here. Line those two up. Boom, there we go. Got some brand new bolts from Dorman here. The original ones were too long because they're designed for a flywheel and not a flex plate. These already have the Loctite on them. Let me find out what size this is. All right, 15 millimeter. Actually, let me get my little impact and zip these down first. If you're ever using one of these to zip down bolts, just keep in mind that this thing tightens at 22 foot-pounds. Now I'll get my torque wrench out. And let me verify. You guys can see me here a little bit better. Let me just verify the torque specs on the internet. You know you can trust everything on the internet. First pass, 15 pounds. Second pass, 37. Final pass, 74. All right. This thing was sorry. All right, second pass, 37 foot-pounds. Oh, okay, gotta hold the flywheel. All right, got my flywheel flex plate holder here. Let's go, the first one. Holding it the wrong way. One, two, three, four, five, six. You notice I'm doing this in a cross pattern just like I would lug nuts on a wheel. Set. Final is 74. One, two, All right. These things are really handy. I mean, you try shoving screwdrivers through holes in here trying to hold it. Just get one of these. They're cheap. All right, we're all torqued down. All right, getting ready to bolt this thing up. See that snout on the torque converter? That actually needs to index into the back of that crankshaft there. And that's why that pilot bearing could not be in place. So let's see if I can muscle this thing in without any help. Boom. Torque converter was not in all the way. All right, now that the motor's all kind of situated, I got the trans bolted up, all ready to go. Now I gotta deal with the fun part, LS wiring. And that looked like fun. So, since I'm doing this on a budget, I'm gonna modify this this original junkyard harness. This is off of a 2005 Escalade. And I'm going to rework it to work with this LS1 motor. Most of the LS motors are the same as long as you're dealing with the correct reluctor wheel on your crank. There's a 24 tooth and there's a 58. You just got to make sure you're running the right year computer for your engine. This one has different injector plugs, which I'll swap out. But before I do any of that, I got to strip this thing down. Looks very intimidating. This is the tack module for my drive-by-wire gas pedal. Get this out of the way. All right, get that out of the way. And get this out of the way. This part here was already cut. It went inside the car for other things. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut it the rest of the way out here. Alright. Gone. Clean. Gone. So on these LS harnesses, this is all the stuff you need right here in this bundle. All the pink wires are basically fused, keyed hot. The orange wire are constant hot battery. And you could just unscrew this and keep this plug intact, but I've done so many of these now that I kind of already know kind of what goes where, so I just chop them, because you can trace these wires afterwards. It's not really that big a deal. So I just go and cut everything out. So now we're kind of more or less broken down to the bare bones. And now it's time to start deleting wires out of here. And to do that, I go to lt1swap.com. There's a guy named Brendan, that runs the site. And he's been awesome enough to run all the pinouts. He tells you exactly what every single pin in this harness does, where every wire goes, and what exactly it does. And he breaks it down to which wires you get to remove to make this a standalone harness. So here we go, truck 2004. Well, it's 2004 to 07, I believe. Yeah, 03 to 07, with the blue and green connector. So it says right here, blue. This is all the pin numbers, 1 through, I think there's like 75 or 100. And then you just go in here and delete the ones that he tells you to delete. So, for example, all right, that's off. If you look very, very closely, every single wire where it goes in, there's a number in there. And that's the number of every single pin. So you go through the instructions here. Everything highlighted in yellow can be removed from the PCM. So the first one on the blue connector here, pin number 7. It is a gray wire, and it's the 5-volt reference for the oil pressure gauge, because we're no longer using this to tell us the oil pressure. We're going to use a separate gauge. Just go through here and boom, number 7, and you pop that out. You need to pop these blue pieces off first. You push in right here on this white, and then up, pull up on the blue at the same time. Same thing on the other side. Push that in. Boom, now that's off. Now I find number 7. Right, instructions said number 7, gray wire. Number 7, gray wire. All right, so this is the gray wire right here going into number 7, and I like to push up on that. Boom, you see that terminal that just popped up a little bit right there? Once that's up, you can pull back this little white tab and then just sneak it right out the back. Boom. First one, free and ready to go. So basically you just go through these whole instructions, remove every single one that it tells you to. Very straightforward. And then after that you can go through the entire harness and pull all of them out. Some of those are going to go to connectors, like this, for example, that there's more than one wire going to it, but one of those wires is going to be a power wire for it. So after you take the whole thing apart, you fish all the wires through, you're going to be taking out some of these wires too. Every single pink wire is a keyed hot fused wire to power something, right? Whether that's a fuel injector or a coil pack or sensor, every single one of these powers one of those. So you're going to be just removing them one at a time. All right, here is a knock sensor harness. Usually replace these because they get kind of beat up, and they're cheap, so I just replace them. I usually don't run the originals, because if you have a knock sensor failure or a wiring harness failure with this little pigtail, you got to pull your whole intake off to fix it. So I'd rather figure it out before it gets to that point. So let's look. Let's find this connector. Was it in this bundle here? Nope. Nope. Is it this one? Boom, there it is. Okay. So know that that goes under the intake. I can shorten that as needed. I still need to find my map sensor plug, and I think it's this one right here. And I have a map sensor that I pulled out of my truck intake that I had, and I put it somewhere where I wouldn't lose it, and I seem to have lost it. All right, I did some digging and I found my map sensor here. This is the plug that I think it is, and I am correct. Okay, sweet. So now that I've identified all of my sensors and where they go, now I can start chopping and modifying. So I'm gonna get this back on the bench. right, I'm all done depinning and fishing all the wires out. I thought I'd spare you guys all that hour of me sitting there at my workbench picking out wires. Let me show you where I'm at. So actually, I decided to hang the harness from this I-beam in my garage because it was kind of easier than getting everything tangled up. Let me show you what I deleted out of the harness. Look at that pile of crap. All those wires, like I cut this thing down by more than half. So now the next step is going to be lay this out on the engine and figure out what goes where, see what I have to extend and what I have to shorten. So let's do that. And if you get confused and like you're like, oh crap, I don't know which injector this is, you just look at that wiring diagram and it'll tell you the color. Pink is always your power. This one is yellow with a black stripe, and you look in that schematic or the paperwork here and it'll tell you. So for example, this injector plug, I got a pink wire, which is power, like I said, and then a yellow with a black stripe. So I just go through here, fuel injector 7, red and black, 4 is light blue and black. Fuel injector number 6, yellow with a black stripe. So now I know this is number 6. So you don't have to worry about getting too confused. On the bank 1, I already labeled all of them. I went through this and saw which one was which. And I just put a little number on it. So this one is number 6. Just write a little number 6 on the plug there. All right, this is what we're left with. Got everything bundled up here. This will be behind the motor. Won't even see it, especially when it's covered all in black tape or conduit. I got the pigtail for the computer going off here to the driver's side. I'm going to put this inside the driver's side inner fender well to hide it, just like I did on my Chevelle. That guy over there. I still need to cut and modify this. This is the wiring for my mass airflow sensor, which I will not be running. I'm going to be running a IAT only intake air temperature sensor. So I need to find out the 2 wires on here that control the air intake temperature and not the mass airflow, and run those to air intake temperature sensor that I'm going to drill and tap into the air cleaner. And then we'll do a speed density tune on this thing instead of mass airflow. I still need to extend my injectors here, which are definitely not long enough. Alternator I'm going to leave for now because I may be running the alternator on the passenger side, so I'll have to extend that a lot further. So, like I said, where we're at now is extending injectors and coil harness. All right, going to be extending these injector wires. Got my heat shrink tube. Put this over the wire first. I got my wire that I'm extending. When I solder, and somebody, everybody does this different, but I like to kind of put this like an X pattern like this and then twist the 2 into each other. Because that way the ball isn't that big, and when you put the heat shrink over, it's almost the same size as the insulation that's already there. I'll warm up my soldering iron. Got my rosin core solder from Radio Shack. That's how long I've had this roll. Sometimes, actually, I like to just load the tip of my soldering iron first and then just melt it in. As it heats up the wire, it just flows right into it. Yep, we're good to go. let that cool off before you slide the heat shrink over it, because if you if you slide it over too soon, it'll start to shrink before you even get it all the way over. Okay, just like that. And then I'll warm that up with a heat gun and shrink it down. Red is done. Do the same process over here. Slide the heat shrink on. You see that? I kind of put it in an X pattern and twist them into each other. Also, when you twist them together, make sure there's no spikes, like no strands of wire like sticking up, like where they're going to be sharp, because that could poke through your heat shrink. All right, once again, warm this thing up. Load the tip up as soon as it gets hot. Load it up with solder, and then warm up the wire, and it'll just flow right in. I like to check it all the way around to make sure that it penetrated and it didn't just sit on top. And we're good. Give it a little tug. It's good to go. There we go. Get out my heat gun. All right. The heat shrink I'm using is also from Harbor Freight. It's the marine heat shrink. The marine stuff has glue on the inside, so when you melt it, it actually glues and seals itself, so like nothing can get into it. No moisture, no nothing. They sell other heat shrink that's just a straight straw, and the straw just shrinks down and that's it, but then that can still slide off and moisture and stuff can get in. So make sure you buy the marine if you're buying this, you know, Harbor Freight stuff. I like this because it already comes in these preset lengths. I'll usually cut these in half or even down 3 times for what I'm doing, but this is perfect. All right, 1 extended. I got to repeat the process here for 2 more. All right, all the ones that need to be extended have been extended. I have to extend this water temp sensor too, so I can run this through around the front of the head and to the water temp sensor. But right now, see, when you're building it yourself, you have the option of running these super tight, super clean, and hide this wiring the best that you can on the top of the motor, which is what you see the most. Back here, who cares? It's on the back of the motor. No one's ever going to see it. So we can get this super tight and clean. Hell, we can even run the wires on this side of the fuel rail if we want. We can play with that. Yeah, I mean, that looks pretty clean. I may end up doing that because it kind of hides underneath the rail. Yeah, so as I wire this, I might run the wires on this side of the rail because they'll hide, if you can see that. They're going to hide pretty good, actually, especially when they're all wrapped in black. It'll kind of hide in here pretty good, I think. I don't know. I don't know if I want to run them in here or run them on the outside. I mean, I could kind of just go wrap them really tight, and once they're wrapped in black, it'll kind of hide along this rail. See, when you're making the harness yourself, you have these options. Make it as clean or as sloppy as you want. So I'm going to have to figure that out, how I want to run this before I go too crazy. All right, this is what I ended up with. Got everything wired, and I ended up kind of hiding it. It kind of tucks, like kind of just disappears. It's all wrapped in black tape. And when it's all together, you kind of not even, you don't even really see it. This side still needs to get wrapped. I left it raw like this because I still need to run my alternator wiring. But this is it for now. The rest of the wiring is going to get done once the engine is in the car. Once I figure out where I want to mount my computer, where I want to mount my fuse block, and then wire up all of this to my fuse block. It looks kind of crazy still, a little intimidating, but it's not bad. I'll show you that once the engine's in the car. So next time you see me, this engine will be going in the car. All right, that's it for this episode. On the next one, this motor's going in the car. Gonna back my C10 into the garage, load this thing up, head up to my mom's, take care of the front brake lines, and get this thing installed. Super excited about that. And if you're interested, check out the next episode. Hope to see you there.